Private limited companies, welcome back. In today's lesson, we will dive into the topic of private limited companies, Ltd, one of the most common business ownership structures for medium and large enterprises. Private limited companies offer a range of benefits, including limited liability for owners and the ability to raise capital more easily than sole traders or partnerships. However, this structure also comes with certain legal requirements and restrictions that business owners need to consider. By the end of this video, you will understand the advantages and disadvantages of private limited companies, as well as how they operate, using examples from Pakistan to provide real-world context. What is a private limited company, RLT? A private limited company is a type of business ownership where the company is a separate legal entity from its owners, called shareholders. This means the company can own assets, enter into contracts, and be sued in its own name. The liability of the shareholders is limited to the value of their shares, protecting their personal assets from the company's debts. Example from Pakistan. A well-known example of a private limited company in Pakistan is Engro Corporation, which operates in sectors such as agriculture, energy, and food processing. Engro's shareholders benefit from limited liability, and the company is managed by a board of directors. Key point: a private limited company is a separate legal entity from its owners, providing limited liability to shareholders while allowing the company to operate independently. Key characteristics of a private limited company. Before we explore the advantages and disadvantages of private limited companies, let's review some of their key characteristics. Limited liability. Shareholders are only liable for the company's debts up to the amount they have invested in shares. This means their personal assets are protected if the business faces financial difficulties. Separate legal entity. The company is a distinct legal entity, separate from its owners, meaning it can own property, enter contracts, and sue or be sued. Restrictions on share transfer. Shares in a private limited company are not publicly traded. Shareholders can only transfer shares with the approval of the other shareholders, ensuring control over ownership. Board of directors. A private limited company is typically managed by a board of directors who are responsible for making strategic decisions and overseeing day-to-day operations. Advantages of private limited companies. Private limited companies offer several benefits, particularly for businesses looking to grow while managing risk. Let's explore the advantages in detail. 1. Limited liability. One of the most significant advantages of a private limited company is limited liability. This means that the shareholders are only liable for the company's debts up to the amount they have invested in the business. Their personal assets, such as their homes or savings, are protected if the business faces financial trouble. Example from Pakistan. In the event of financial difficulties, the shareholders of Packages Limited, a private company in Pakistan's packaging industry, would not be required to pay the company's debts out of their own pockets. Their liability would be limited to the value of their shares in the company. Key point: limited liability protects the personal assets of shareholders, reducing their financial risk if the business incurs debt or losses. 2. Separate legal entity. A private limited company is a separate legal entity from its owners. This means that the company can enter into contracts, own property, and take legal action independently of its shareholders. This separation provides legal protection for the shareholders and allows the company to operate more efficiently. Example from Pakistan. Engro Corporation can enter into contracts with suppliers and customers, and the shareholders are not personally liable for these agreements. If there is a legal dispute, it is the company, not the shareholders, that will be sued. Key point: the separation between the company and its shareholders provides legal protection and allows the business to operate independently. 3. Access to capital. Private limited companies can raise capital by issuing shares to investors. Although shares in a private limited company are not publicly traded, the company can still bring in external investors, such as family members, friends, or private equity firms, to finance its growth. Example from Pakistan. Fatima Group, a private limited company involved in agriculture and chemicals, can raise capital by issuing shares to private investors, helping the business expand its operations and invest in new projects. Key point: private limited companies have the ability to raise capital through share issuance, allowing for greater financial flexibility and growth potential. 4. Continuity and stability. Private limited companies offer continuity, meaning that the business can continue to operate even if one or more shareholders leave, retire, or pass away. This is because the company's existence is not tied to the life of its shareholders. Example from Pakistan. If a shareholder of Kaadi, a popular fashion brand in Pakistan structured as a private limited company, decides to sell their shares or retires, the company will continue to operate without disruption. Key point: private limited companies provide continuity, ensuring that the business can continue to operate smoothly, even if ownership changes. 5. Professional management. Private limited companies are typically managed by a board of directors, which allows for more professional management. The board is responsible for making strategic decisions, while day-to-day operations are often handled by experienced managers. This structure can lead to more effective business management and decision-making. Example from Pakistan. Dolans, a leading home appliance company, has a board of directors that oversees its operations and ensures that the company is managed professionally and in the best interest of its shareholders. Key point: professional management by a board of directors ensures that the company is run effectively and strategically, benefiting from experienced leadership. Disadvantages of private limited companies. While private limited companies offer many benefits, they also come with certain challenges that business owners need to be aware of. Let's explore the disadvantages. 1. Legal formalities and costs. Setting up and maintaining a private limited company involves legal formalities and costs that are not required for sole traders or partnerships. These formalities include registering the company, maintaining financial records, filing annual returns, and holding shareholder meetings. This administrative burden can be time-consuming and costly for small businesses. Example from Pakistan. A private limited company in Pakistan must register with the Securities and Exchange Commission of Pakistan, SECP, file annual returns, and comply with various legal requirements. These formalities can add complexity and costs to running the business. Key point: private limited companies face higher administrative and legal requirements, which can increase the costs and complexity of running the business. 2. Restricted share transfer. In a private limited company, the transfer of shares is restricted, meaning that shareholders cannot sell their shares freely. Typically, shareholders must obtain the approval of other shareholders before transferring ownership. While this restriction helps maintain control over the company, it can make it difficult for shareholders to exit the business. Example from Pakistan. If a shareholder of Dalda Foods, a private limited company, wants to sell their shares, they may need approval from the other shareholders, which can complicate the sale process. Key point: restricted share transfer can limit flexibility for shareholders who wish to sell their shares or leave the company, making it harder to exit the business. 3. Limited access to public capital markets. Unlike public limited companies, PLCEs, private limited companies cannot raise capital by selling shares to the general public on a stock exchange. This limits their ability to raise large amounts of capital quickly and makes them more reliant on private investors or loans for funding. Example from Pakistan. While a company like Engro Corporation can raise capital through private investors, it cannot offer shares to the public on the Pakistan Stock Exchange, PSX, limiting its options for raising large-scale funding. Key point: Private limited companies cannot access public capital markets, which can limit their ability to raise significant amounts of capital compared to public companies. 4. Shared ownership and potential conflicts. Private limited companies involve shared ownership, which can lead to conflicts among shareholders, particularly if there are disagreements about the direction of the business, profit distribution, or management decisions. These conflicts can slow decision-making and create tension within the company. Example from Pakistan. If the shareholders of a private limited company in Pakistan's textile industry disagree on how to reinvest profits or expand the business, it can lead to delays in decision-making and potential conflict. Key point: shared ownership in private limited companies can lead to conflicts among shareholders, which can impact the smooth running of the business. 5. Disclosure requirements. Private limited companies are required to disclose certain financial information, including filing annual financial statements with government authorities. While these requirements are less strict than those for public companies, they still require a higher level of transparency than sole traders or partnerships. Example from Pakistan. A private limited company like Sapphire Group must submit financial reports and comply with SECP regulations, which requires additional time and resources to ensure transparency. Key point: private limited companies face disclosure requirements that require them to submit financial information to regulatory authorities, adding to their administrative burden. Conclusion and key insights. In conclusion, private limited companies offer several advantages, including limited liability, access to capital, professional management, and continuity. However, they also come with disadvantages, such as increased legal formalities, restricted share transfer, and potential conflicts among shareholders. Understanding the pros and cons of private limited companies can help entrepreneurs and business owners decide whether this structure is the right fit for their business goals and growth plans. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more valuable insights and tutorials on O and A level business. This video was created by Dr. Sajad Haider, O and A level business specialist. Stay tuned for more content.